Welcome to this edition of Talk of the Town Live. This we plan to air every other Thursday at 7 o'clock, and I'll co-anchor this show together with Kim Whitaker, and from time to time some of us will be traveling, so it'll be just one of us. Tonight Kim is down on the Cape. Hello Kim. Well, of course you can't watch, but you may see the replay. Rory Schuler, the editor of Winchester Star, will be the local news editor for the show, and the other members of the cast. We plan to bring you the news and issues for Winchester and to have guests and call-ins in the show. And the call-in number is 781-721-2050. Let me repeat that. For those that want to call in, 781-721-2050. Rory Schuler was appointed editor of the Winchester Star just over a year ago and has been very, very active in his activities around the community. Welcome, Rory.
Thank you, Dave. Nice to be here.
Good. Well, just for the folks at home, this first show might be a little bit rough because this is the first time we've done Talk of the Town live and in this format, so bear with us. We'll hope to work through the wrinkles over the course of the hour, and we'll be back in a couple of weeks, hopefully bigger and better and improved as we learn from this experience. But to the first story of the show, Rory, there's a lot that's been going on in the McCall Middle School, with a lot being said about the French family, Chris French, Vandy French and so forth. And in the interest of full disclosure, let me say that Vandy French is chairman of the board of WinCam, but there is no editorial control from the board over what content we have on this show. So we want to take an objective look at what's going on, and I know you're all on top of the story, so tell us more about it.
Nothing like starting off light, I suppose.
Yes, I know, it's a delicate story.
This is a very difficult story that surfaced about 2 weeks ago. About 2 weeks ago, we got a press release, which was sent out to just about every news organization in the Bay State, basically detailing the arrest of Christopher French, who was working as a teacher's aide at the McCall Middle School. Police chief here in Winchester, Kenneth Albertelli, he faxed this police report out, held the report off, but faxed the press release out. Press release revealed just a few vital details about the arrest. Essentially, Christopher French was charged with 1 count of child enticement. That charge stemmed from some alleged conversations that were held over the internet with a student from the McCall Middle School, or at least a 13-year-old girl who was a student at the McCall Middle School.
Well, now, when he was arrested, does that imply that he's still in jail, or was he on bail? Or
he was released on bail almost immediately after his arraignment.
Do you know how much the bail was, just out of interest?
It was nominal bail. It was fairly low. I think it was about $500.
Okay, so he's not considered a flight risk or anything like that?
No, I don't believe so. The criminal case has a lot of ins and outs and details. It's one of those cases that exists almost exclusively on a hard drive. It initially sparked when the older sister of the alleged victim came to police with some concerns that her younger sister had been having somewhat inappropriate conversations with a much older man. In this case, if this is true, Christopher French is a little more than twice the age of the alleged victim.
Yeah, what are the ages?
Chris French is 27 years old, and the alleged victim is 13. So, do the math. Now, basically, what happened was this information came to light. The police proceeded fairly quickly to consult with the district attorney's office. Together, the two entities decided that there was enough to go on from the start. So they secured a search warrant for the French home on Hollywood Road, I believe. They searched the home. When they searched the home and put Christopher French under arrest, they found out that Chris French's laptop computer, which is alleged to have been the main mode of communication that was used. After that, the police warrant received that laptop, and then there was talk of a third warrant, but we really haven't heard much about that or the location of where that third warrant may be. So it's a little bit unclear at this point. Essentially, this case will play out in the courts. No guilt has been determined, of course, at this point. It's very early on. Chris French's defense attorney has said flat out, essentially, that his client is innocent. So we'll see how this spells out. But now the really interesting part about this case, and something that I think needs a lot of conversation, is the fact that Chris French's father is Vandy French, who is the principal at McCall.
Right.
Much loved in town.
Very much so.
And his mother also works in the district. The main concern, though, at least for one resident who drafted a fairly long and verbose and very interesting letter to the school committee and all local elected officials and candidates for local office. His name was Christian Nixon. He has a few young children in the district. His concern was essentially the role that nepotism may have played in this case.
Right.
More simply, the fact of the difficulties put in place by, say, fellow staff members or even students who may have had an inkling that something may have been wrong, and just the spot that they would have been in to have to report to who would have been the supervisor at the school, the top administrator, who is actually the accused father.
Yes,
So-
it's very, very awkward.
Yes, awkward to say the least, I'd say.
Are there any school district rules that pertain to family members being hired and arm's length dealings or anything like that were followed or not followed?
Well, Chris's letter was right on in the fact where he alluded to other states that have very firm nepotism laws put in place. He grew up in the state of Texas, where there are firm nepotism rules in place as
I
far
thought
as
they invented
public
nepotism in
employment.
Texas.
Well, you would think so
Not in the
too. I
schools,
was a little
apparently.
surprised to hear the
Yes.
location in Lone Star State, but basically, Chris has seen things like this stopped in other districts. Basically, in the state of Massachusetts, there are very few general rules. I think everybody's trying to get themselves up to date with what the law actually says and requires.
Right.
There's been talk by Superintendent Bill McAuliffe and some others that at least one rule that is in place is that the school committee is supposed to be notified when a direct family member is going to be brought into the school district, especially when the relative in question is in a supervisory role, which in this case is very clear. Some very recent news that broke on Tuesday night, Superintendent McAuliffe actually read a statement to the school committee, which essentially admitted the fact that at very least the school committee doesn't seem to have been notified. Discussion I had with at least one school committee member seems to indicate that at very least no school committee members seem to have recollection of being informed of Chris French's hiring. And even more
do we know
worrisome, though, is the fact that Mr. McAuliffe admitted that he's unsure that a background check was performed before Chris French was hired.
Oh.
Now, we have no reason, we're actually following the process now of getting a background check ourselves. Not really an easy process to follow, but so we don't know if anything in there would have
How would you
tipped
do
anybody
that?
off.
What sort of?
Well, online there are certain protocols that you can follow, and you can pay for. You can actually pay to have anybody's background check that you'd like.
Right.
It's a small fee, but we're in the process of
And
securing
this
that
is sort of,
information to
this is
know
sort
if
of
this
police
would have
record
tipped anybody off.
or
Pretty much.
other court cases or the sort of range of.
Very similar to
things.
the Corey check that's done. And you know, in fact, this is unusual because in Massachusetts especially, Corey checks are usually required not only for people who are employed by the school district, but also by, say, if a parent's going to volunteer in a class.
Right.
Oftentimes a Corey check is performed just to make sure that parent doesn't have a criminal record.
Who actually did the hiring in this case? I mean, what do we know the chain of?
That happens to be something else that's also murky. And we
Oh, I
don't
see.
know for sure if this is murky because people's memories of this, this was only less than 2 years ago. Chris French has been with the district since 2006.
Right.
So, so this is a tricky case. It's hard to tell if this is selective amnesia or if these things are less than clear. Here's a statement from Mr. McAuliffe.
Yeah,
I think
please.
that would actually add a
Yeah.
lot to this conversation. Bill McAuliffe read this at the very beginning of Tuesday night's school committee meeting. This is how it begins. A little more than 2 weeks ago, we learned that a McCall Middle School teacher assistant had been arrested by the Winchester Police and upon his arraignment in Woburn District Court was charged with one count of child enticement. Needless to say, this arrest and the allegations that have been brought forward have shaken the McCall School, the district as a whole, and the Winchester community to its core. Although these types of cases are heart-wrenching on so many different levels, in this particular situation where the accused also happens to be the son of the school's principal, it makes this case an exceptionally difficult circumstance. As a result of these developments, I have been working closely with Bob Frazier and Andrea Bell, attorneys with the committee's legal firm of Stoneham, Chandler, and Miller. It is important to note that when a school department employee is charged with a crime, it is imperative that the school department, in this case the school district senior administrators, conduct its own investigation of the allegations connected with these criminal charges when the allegations impact the school community. Both Bob and Andrea have been working and consulting with us as Dr. Kerbel and I investigate this matter. The investigation is ongoing. Certainly at times like these, there are many questions that are raised by residents, parents, committee members, staff, and others. Sometimes these questions and concerns are pursued in the public venue, such as letters to the editor and media reports, and often they come about as the result of private conversations between members of the community at large that make their way through various circles. In this case, there has been some public dialogue regarding the school district's policies regarding the employment of immediate family members. Some valid points in this regard have been raised over the course of several meetings. The school committee will have an opportunity to discuss and review this, as well as other issues that may come forward as a result. I want to assure the school committee and the Winchester community that I take our responsibility in this matter very seriously and will take necessary steps from a legal standpoint, an employment standpoint, and an outreach standpoint to maintain the integrity and purpose of our main mission, which is to provide all students with outstanding education and a nurturing environment that fosters academic achievement, healthy social and economic development, enthusiasm for education, and a lifelong love of learning. Mr. McAuliffe, I spoke to him earlier today, would have liked to have called in, he said, but he's actually at a conference all day long and he's tied up now.
I think we've got Chris Nixon on the phone right now, actually.
Oh, excellent.
Should
Well,
we-
Chris Nixon is the parent who wrote the letter,
Yes.
raising a lot of these concerns.
Should we chat to Chris? Good evening, Chris.
Good evening, Dave.
How are you this evening?
I'm doing very well. I want to thank you and Rory for the invitation to be with you this evening. It's an exciting project you have, and certainly tonight, the inaugural of your live show is very exciting. I would also just like to say I continue to learn some new and interesting things about Vandy French. Your public disclosure this evening I thought was interesting, noting him as chairman of WinCam. It's just another example of the incredible contribution that he has made and continues to make to this community. So I and many others certainly appreciate that.
Good. Can you, you've heard, if you were watching the show, you've heard that Rory read your letter. What would you care to?
Actually, I read Mr. McAuliffe's statement.
Oh, it's Mr. Corlstad. So,
But Chris was sitting in the audience when Mr. McAuliffe read this statement.
that. Okay,
so
sorry, my confusion.
no problem.
So, what are your thoughts, Chris? What are the issues as you see them?
Well, I certainly appreciate the statement that Mr. McAuliffe prepared. I thought it was very well written, very thoughtful and constructive. I would just point out, if Rory has not already done so tonight, that Bill McAuliffe is fairly new to Winchester. It should probably be said that he was not our superintendent when Chris French was hired, so that's probably an important point to make as he and his colleagues try to dig into this. But I thought it was very constructive. I take him at his word. I had a very constructive one-on-one meeting with our superintendent about a week and a half ago and came away convinced that he shares some of my concerns and some of my interests. Comments made by the chair of our school committee and one of her colleagues, Mr. Schindelman, as well, Tuesday night, suggests to me that the school committee is very much behind our superintendent's suggestion that we look not only at this issue, what we're calling nepotism, and I don't frankly care for that word much, but that's frankly the word that is so frequently tied to these kinds of rules or regulations. But that not only with respect to this issue, but a more wide-sweeping review of school committee policies is in order. And I understand that that's frankly not unusual when a new superintendent comes to town. I gather from comments made at the school committee meeting Tuesday that in fact this is something that they've been discussing, I think going back to last spring. When would it be appropriate to initiate a review of school committee policies? And I believe the superintendent used the word ironic, given the turn of events with Christopher French, that the timing, of course, is now perfect to do just that. So I welcome his comments. I think the statement was very thoughtfully prepared. And as I recall, I think they're planning on working through the next series of school committee meetings to deal with this issue. I and others don't expect anything to go too quickly. I think we should move carefully and thoughtfully in this process while we look at all the school committee policies so that we can be sure to get the input of those who would have comments to make, pros and cons.
is the school committee themselves going to have an investigation of exactly how this all came to pass?
Well, that's a good question, Dave. Mr. McAuliffe references in his written statement that he delivered Tuesday night that, as would always be the case with a criminal complaint, one that involves a school member who has contact with students, that necessarily the school system, school committee would launch its own investigation. I asked him to expound on that somewhat Tuesday night to clarify whether or not that investigation would also look into the means and methods of the hiring of Christopher French. In other words, what were the rules that were in place? Were the rules followed? If the notification was made, what therefore did the school committee do with that? He responded that actually would be a separate investigation. I gather they've already dug into this. As Rory noted, the statements made Tuesday night indicate that the very minimal state rules that we have in Massachusetts, in fact, were not followed in this case. The notification was not provided. But I should also echo the point, which I think Rory and his colleagues put on the front page of the Winchester Star today, that from Superintendent McAuliffe, the finger should not be pointed at Vandy French. The responsibility for notification, in fact, was with the central office and not with him. So I think that's an important point to make as well.
Sure. And I think, Chris, you feel very strongly about the fact that nepotism isn't necessarily an all bad thing. That you don't want to really necessarily exclude family members, talented family members, from working within the district just because they have another relative in a supervisory role.
Absolutely right, Rory. I'm glad you mentioned that. There are cases I'm familiar with. In fact, here in Winchester, we have a first grade teacher at my son's elementary school, a career teacher. I think she's terrific. She's very well respected. She's done something right because her daughter chose to follow in her footsteps and pursue education as a career. And for a period of time, I think a couple of years, her daughter was actually a kindergarten teacher at the same school. She has since moved on to pursue an advanced degree, and so she's not in the school right now. But that was something I certainly had no problem with. In fact, I looked at that as frankly a benefit to everyone, particularly given the relationship that kindergarten and first grade teachers need to have with one another when they discuss the development of children and proper class placement for the next year. So that's one example I'm familiar with, but certainly there are many others. But more generally, Rory, the issue is it's not so much having immediate family members work in the same facility or school building, but rather it's trying to avoid putting rules in place to prohibit, in fact, immediate family members working in the same school building when one is in a supervisory position. And of course, that's the case we had here at McCall. Nepotism rules that are put in place in other districts across the country have different motivations. They're sort of threefold. The first, frankly, that comes to many people's minds has to do with the interest of the taxpayer. In other words, is it in the taxpayer's interest to have a scenario where one family member would be conducting performance evaluations of another and making compensation recommendations? And of course, the answer is no. And so that's one issue that we can address by simply ensuring that we don't have that kind of relationship exist. Second issue, which frankly to me is more about kind of the day-to-day running of a school, something I'm certainly not expert in as a parent, but I'm just struck by how many professionals come together to make a school work. We have teachers, we have psychologists, we have teachers' aides, we have, of course, the administrators, but we've got parents who are volunteering in the classroom. Just a tremendous number of professionals come together to provide a learning environment for our kids. It strikes me that there must be conflicts that arise on some basis between education professionals. And while I'm sure they try to resolve them amongst themselves, there may be times when they can't. And they need to want to go to the principal to seek some resolution. It seems to me that teachers would not want to approach a principal or would be less inclined to approach a principal for help with a dispute if, in fact, that family connection was there with one of the teachers involved. So that's strictly kind of a day-to-day issue. And then I think the third issue is the one, frankly, that sparked my letter to the school committee, and that is as awkward as it must be for anyone in the school, whether it's a student or a school member, to bring forward to a principal knowledge or suspicions of inappropriate behavior. It's really hard for me to imagine, in fact, how difficult that must be. Surely that is made all the more difficult when you have a relationship such as we had at McCall, where let's say the reporter, and I don't want to use the word accuser, but the reporter may already have great anxiety and stress about coming forward. Surely they would think twice or three times about coming to the principal with the understanding that the principal is directly related to the person with whom they suspect there have been inappropriate activity. So that's sort of, I think, the threefold issue for me on this, Rory.
Yes.
Well, absolutely. I think that was the point that was made that really opened people's eyes. And it was made at the very beginning of this letter.
Yes.
So where a letter could easily be dismissed, a letter that makes very strong points just can't be denied. Also, I think it was important that you also discussed the very somewhat public way that this whole alleged communication occurred. You addressed in your letter very specifically the Facebook and MySpace aspect of this, which means this was out in the public. It was on the World Wide Web. There's a very good chance that this older sister of the alleged victim wasn't the first to have noticed this.
Yes.
Right.
Can I interrupt for just a second? For those of you that might be calling in, that if you hit the voicemail, because there's only one live line here, please hang up and call back in, because no one will be collecting the voicemail during the show. And if you want to have a chance to be heard, please call back in. Just listen for a break in the show too, and at that time have a go at calling in. Thanks. So Chris, where do we go from here? What's the next step in the process with the French family?
Well, of course, Vandy has rightly gathered so much support within the community for his role as a principal at McCall, and I hope to see that continue, because this matter, as I think Rory acknowledged at the beginning of the show, is really not about Vandy or his wife Leslie. It's about Chris. I think it's important for the criminal proceedings to go forward. Christopher French is entitled to a presumption of innocence, as we would all expect. So I think the issue of the pending criminal matter is frankly a separate issue from this call for change that I'm suggesting that we look at. With respect, though, Dave, to where we go from here, as I believe it was Tip O'Neill's father who said all politics is local, and yes, I actually learned about that growing up in Texas. I do feel that the wheels will turn faster within this community than they would at the state level. I cited in my letter, as Rory has noted, that there are nepotism rules or guidelines that are put in place across the country, sometimes at a municipal level, sometimes at a state level. I think it is in everyone's interest to have guidelines such as these in place, frankly, at the state level. And so I've had some conversations with our Senator, Pat Jalen, who's been very supportive. She's indicated her interest in drafting some legislation for consideration in the next term. And I've also reached out to some of our candidates for the open house seat who also indicate their support. I want to echo, actually, something that Senator Jalen said, because I thought it was very important. She cited a number of resources for this discussion, which is what it needs to be, because there are really very many stakeholders, others with expertise that may have some important points for us to consider. She cited the Massachusetts Association of Superintendents, as well as the Association of School Committees. I did not know either of those organizations exist. I have reached out to the Massachusetts Teachers Association and got some input from them as well. So I think at a state level, clearly, there are many entities that have important voices that need to be heard. And my hope is that at a local level, frankly, that I'm sure our superintendent, Bill McAuliffe, has access to the same kind of resources at the state level, for instance, the Association of Superintendents, that our senator would. And I'd like to think that both our superintendent and our school committee will be able to reach out to some of their peers for their advice as we move forward. But bottom line, Dave, I would like to see us discuss and adopt a rule that changes our employment practices in the Winchester school system that would prohibit immediate family members from principals and associate principals, those being the supervisory roles in a school. It would prohibit them from working in the same school building, would not prohibit them from working within the school system, would not penalize them in any way. They'd have the same education, continuing education opportunities, career advancement opportunities they would otherwise have, but that we would look for literally other school sites to place them. So that's where I'd like us to be, frankly, in a year's time, and we'll see how the wheels turn at the state level. I would say I've been very encouraged by the feedback that I've received from folks in town so far. The responses have sort of run the gamut from this is an interesting idea, didn't know we had this kind of rule in place, this is something we should consider, and the other extreme is, gee, I thought we had a nepotism rule in place, seems like a slam dunk, we should do this. So haven't been too many detractors, frankly, to this point. I think those who are expressing reservations are frankly those who feel like call for legislative change is, and I'll borrow the expression from one of the bloggers on the website last week, calling for legislative change may, if you'll excuse the expression, be trying to kill the ant with a sledgehammer. And so I think certainly I and others, the school committee needs to be responsive to that. I think this is a process that needs to include the voices of many. But I do feel strongly change is in order in some way, shape, or form.
Thank you very much, Chris. I really appreciate your call.
Thank you.
I think that gives us an opportunity maybe to throw in a shameless plug for our website and the ability to comment afterward.
Sure.
We
Please
did
do.
actually. We ran a story as soon as we found out about Chris's
We're
letter.
being, just to remind you, the Winchester
The
Star.
Winchester Star. www.thewinchesterstar.com
Oh, okay, we've got it this way.
or wickedlocal/Winchester. Essentially, we ran the story breaking the news that Chris wrote this letter and that it was sent to so many people. And really the ideas contained within were the real news. But that spontaneously somewhat spurred a conversation online afterward. You have the opportunity to comment after each story, so Chris actually took an active role in commenting on the story that was about the letter he wrote. And he was quoting from one of the commenters on his story online. So it's a great opportunity to carry this discussion on past the newspaper, past the public access television, and onto the internet. So that is an opportunity for each of you to comment.
That completes the shameless commerce part of the... No, just kidding. That was good.
Absolutely
And
true.
so where again do they go to find the blogs on the website?
Well, after each story. We also have a blog. There's a link on our site to our Winchester Star blog. It's called Winchester Star Exploration. It's a little bit of a complicated URL, so I won't give you the address. But if you go to thewinchesterstar.com, you'll find the stories and all the links that you need to actively partake in any discussion in town that's worth having.
Great. Well, to pick up on the theme, all politics are local, how much more local can you get than this particular campaign piece, which just arrived in my Winchester Star this morning, and I guess there's a whole story behind this, which I think I could probably quickly summarize as a rather crude piece of swift boating, at least a swift boating attempt. But why don't you fill folks at home in on exactly what this is all about?
Well, actually, I've just seen the actual piece of literature within the last hour myself. But what I saw were the 3 letters to the editor that came in within the last 24 hours pertaining to this.
Right.
One, luckily, came in early enough to make this week's edition. It's in this week's paper. The other 2 will be online by Friday. Essentially, we have a very competitive state reps race going on right now for Paul Casey's seat.
Yes, and Paul has, for those that don't know at home, Paul decided not to run.
Which was somewhat of a surprise, I think, to a lot of people, because this
it
race
was.
started as Jason Lewis running against
Paul Casey. And in fact, Paul was running and decided to withdraw.
Exactly.
We did an interview with him a few months ago now on Talk of the Town, and also one with Jason. And we still have ahead of us to do some interviews with some of the other candidates.
Well, now this has become a 4-way race. We have Mike Rotundi, who's the Stoneham town moderator. We've got Jason Lewis. We have Chad Riley. And we also have a 4th, Brian O'Connor, who's a selectman here in town.
Right.
So it's a race that looks like it's going to get heated very quickly. This is really the first piece of campaign
So what
literature
are
I've seen.
the party affiliations? Brian is running as a GOP candidate, and Jason's obviously running as a Democrat.
Yes.
Riley is running as a independent, or is it?
Chad's with us. Can we ask him?
I don't see.
Does it mention?
I don't think I see a party affiliation here.
I believe so, but I think it's really the content of the mailing that has some of our readers concerned to some extent.
Yes.
I'd like to read you a line or two from a few of these letters. I have permission actually to. There were letters to the editor, so I plan to print them. But
Right.
one is from Diana Carson. Diana actually might call in this evening. But she asks simply, she starts her letter with a question. Does negative campaigning have a place in Winchester? Are the residents of Winchester smart enough to make a voting decision based on the issues?
Actually, let me interrupt you for a second.
Go ahead.
Because I don't think we've really explained quite what this piece
See if we can get a shot of it.
does. The issue with this piece, or we may have a graphic of this, is that it accuses, it makes an accusation that Jason Lewis is a socialist, as if socialist was some kind of really toxic thing for one thing. But it really doesn't present any evidence of that. It basically makes the assertion based on the fact that he's being endorsed by an organization, one part of which has some affiliation with socialism, rather than the fact that he's a Harvard Business School MBA, an economist from Harvard, and has been involved with business all his life. So there's not too many socialists that I know that would come with those kind of blue chip kind of.
It looks like the Riley
things, so
camp's
it's
drawing
kind
the
of strange.
association between Jason Lewis's established association with Mass Alliance, which is a large group of, I believe, 22 different organizations, one of which happens to be a socialist group.
Right. But it's progressive clauses of all sort of flavors, right?
I don't think anybody's used the word yet in the letters, but it does have a little tinge of McCarthyism, I suppose, attaching,
Not Mass Alliance, you mean this
that, exactly.
Yes, exactly.
The
It's like,
mailing, using socialists as a sort of smack term. But
Yes.
I have had one writer.
it's clearly not a loving term in this context. It's a diss.
Well, I think Eli Bortman summed it up, his feelings on the topic. He has a two-word sentence starting his letter, and Eli might call as well. What a sleaze, with 3 exclamation points. I received a postcard today from the committee to elect Chad Riley. It asked the innocent question, innocent in quotation marks, is Jason Lewis a socialist? After all, the card points out Lewis's campaign is supported by the Mass Alliance, a coalition of 22 organizations, and the alliance endorses candidates who support their values. Since one of the 22 organizations is a socialist group, Riley suggests that Lewis might be a socialist. The suggestion is both preposterous and sleazy. This is in Eli Bortman's words, of course. The Sierra Club is also a Mass Alliance member organization. Riley's logic would suggest we ask whether Lewis is a tree hugger. Massachusetts Peace Action.
Better than a bush hugger, I guess.
I guess. Massachusetts Peace Action is a member organization too. Is Lewis a peacenik? A mass gay and lesbian group is also an alliance member. Maybe Lewis is a lesbian, Eli says. Lucky for Lewis, there's no Muslim group in the alliance.
Thank heavens. We have a caller. Who do we have on the line?
Hi, good evening, David. Stevie Roy. Chad Riley.
Hi, Chad.
Oh, Chad. Hi, good evening.
Yeah. Maybe we could start just by talking about what your intentions were behind this mailing. What message you wanted to get out there.
Well, sure, that's great, Larry. First of all, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to call in. I understand Rory had called me this evening on my cell phone to let me know that we'd be discussing this topic here on Talk of the Town, and late this evening, so I rearranged my schedule. On the viewing audience should know I'm literally just outside, about 10 feet away from Rory and David. But because of the technical difficulties, it's forcing me to call in. First of all, I'd just like to take an opportunity to introduce myself. My name is Chad Riley. I live on Canterbury Road, and I'm running for state representative. And I came in late to this race. I haven't been out there as long as Jason or some of the other candidates, but I am in the race. And I entered the race as an independent. And I just wanted to take this opportunity to set some background here so people can understand the context of my candidacy and what I'm actually trying to question by way of this particular piece. My parents are Democrats, my grandparents were Democrats. We come from a long family tradition of supporting the Democratic Party. I'm not in favor of the death penalty. I'm pro-choice. And I was a prosecutor for a number of years. I'm an attorney. I have a local business here in Winchester, and I'm raising my family here in Winchester, and I'm educating my children in the Winchester Public Schools here. Just so we can hear the viewers the reason that I have to run as an independent. Paul Casey, as everybody knows, has been the incumbent state representative for the past 20 years, and he made the decision to withdraw from the race in April. And that was an important timeline because when he pulled out, I received some input from the citizenry here in Winchester that they really wanted another option in this race. And I explained to them, thank you, that I have been an unenrolled voter for quite some time now, and that in order to run, I would have to run as an independent. And I'd have to run as an independent because in order to run in a party primary, you have to be a member of that party in January. And because Paul Casey didn't pull out until April, it left me no other option than to run as an independent. So I'm statutorily required, if I want to participate in this race, to run as an independent. I'm not hiding that. I'm not hiding the fact that I'm going to join with Democrats in the Democratic Party if and when elected. And so I think that's important to get that out there, that there's not some type of stealth candidacy going on. I want to get to... Oh, yes, I can't hear you very well, David. David, Roy?
The question was, why did you use this campaign piece, and what were you trying to accomplish by basically accusing Jason of being a socialist? It seems like you've given a long commercial of why you got in this race, but you've not explained the background to, or the evidence for that matter, that you think he's a socialist, other than the fact that he's got this very, 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 very indirect association via another...
I disagree with the premise of your question, David. First of all, I think the piece is an informational piece. First of all, why am I running? What concerned me when Paul dropped out was there was left a candidate who had been in the race for a while and who had raised a lot of money. He's worked very hard, and I certainly respect his hard work. But the facts and evidence suggest that it's not all his own individual hard work that is behind the scenes in this particular race. And I was concerned when I learned about some of the background from his campaign. Now, I have his card in front of me and his palm piece. And Jason indicates that certainly he's for strong public schools, more local aid, affordable health care, and smart economic growth. And those are the four things I'm all in favor of 100%. And I bet dollars to donuts, if you ask Brian O'Connor and Mike Rotundi if they were here this evening, they would also agree that they are for strong public schools, more local aid, affordable health care, and smart economic growth. So the question becomes in this race, who's going to be the best advocate, David, for Winchester, and who has the good judgment and ability to advocate on Winchester and Stone's behalf? And to get right to the point, to answer your question, this is a political position. I'm in for all the issues that Jason has in his palm card, as I just indicated. In fact, but what concerned me it was that I learned he was recruited and trained and financed by a group of outside, small, and narrow groups. And what I found particularly troublesome was that he chose this. He made a personal choice to seek the endorsement of this coalition of small and narrow groups. Now, Mass Alliance, I want to read you, and I certainly have it here. I have to have it on camera. But just to give the viewers and the voters at large an idea of what's going on here behind the scenes, I think the viewers and the citizenry, and what I try to do with this piece is to educate them as who is backing Mr. Lewis's campaign. And it's not just backing him financially. There's one thing, David and Roy, to accept a $50 or $100 donation for some of these groups. You're going to get that. Every politician is going to get that. But in this case, what we have a whole different entity unto itself here. Just reading from, and anybody can go to Mass Alliance's website and read this. Everything in that card, David and Roy, is available online and in the public domain. Mass Alliance, just quoting from this particular piece, is, quote, a powerful, united voice for the broad progressive movement in Massachusetts politics. We are a coalition of 22 progressive organizations committed to collaboration, education, advocacy, and electoral work in order to advance the progressive agenda. Later in that same first page of the website, it indicates that, quote, Mass Alliance seeks out progressive champions for the legislative office. Every election cycle, we research candidates for legislative office across the Commonwealth in order to find those candidates who will be the best advocates for priorities of all our members. We endorse candidates who support this broad progressive agenda. Further quoting, Mass Alliance PAC makes the difference between progressives winning or losing their elections. we provide direct support for progressive candidates in their campaigns. Together, we, quote, work with candidates endorsed by Mass Alliance to help them run successful grassroots campaigns and communicate effectively about progressive values.
Can we hold it? Is there no way to interrupt him? It's clear that we need an ability to interrupt. Is he still online? Yeah. So here's my question. Is Mass Alliance some massive socialist conspiracy? Or is there one small part of Mass Alliance that has some socialist...
I'd like to throw something out there too. I heard the word progressive so much more than I heard the word socialist. I hear the word progressive thrown out there much more than the word socialist. Sounds to me like, and progressivism really seems more closely aligned with the Democratic Party right now than perhaps the Socialist Party.
Putting aside the definition of socialism altogether, it just seems to me that it's being used here as a pejorative. It's being used as a slam rather than an identification of some behaviors that Jason has that we would say would be undesirable.
Well, let me answer that. The position of state representative is a political position, and I certainly don't mean that in a pejorative sense. And what we have here is a candidate who made a choice, a personal choice, to align himself with this group, to accept their endorsement, their consulting services, their travel and expenses, and their campaign title. My point is, it's reasonable to infer that he will carry these political beliefs into this political position where he can work to implement the agenda of these small and narrow groups. Now, I didn't invent the concept of what Mass Alliance is, and I didn't certainly insist that the Massachusetts Socialist Party be part of that agenda, but the fact it is. And if you read the literature, it says that in order to receive their endorsement of Mass Alliance, you have to subscribe in advance to all the members' agenda. And, people want to assert that that's not fair for Chad to raise that. But the fact is that the Socialist Party, the Massachusetts Democratic Socialist Party, is part of Mass Alliance, and they are, one of 22 groups that is participating behind the scenes in the Lewis campaign. And I think this piece was designed to bring that out. In other words, a state representative should have good judgment. It's all about judgment. And I think this was an example of poor judgment on Mr. Lewis's behalf to allow these people not just to contribute $50 or $100, but to allow them to essentially recruit him.
Chad, could you tell us a little bit about why you feel socialism is such a negative, why it is that you feel being a socialist in this case would be so bad for a state representative?
Roy, I'm going to have to turn the television up in the lobby because I can't hear you at all, and I'm going to ask you to repeat that question.
No problem, Chad. I'd like you to tell us what is wrong with socialism.
Well, what is wrong with socialism? Well, don't you agree, Roy, that really socialism is the exact opposite of the society we live in? We live in a capitalistic society. We live in a society where it's based on free market values and principles. I mean, don't you agree that the United States is based on the principle of capitalism and free market values, and isn't that something we want to preserve and foster?
I agree that socialism was the exact opposite of that, by the way, but why don't you care to give the audience your definition of socialism rather than what it's not?
Oh, I would be happy to. Socialism, in the strict or radical sense of the word, aims to establish a fundamentally different society from the one that currently exists in most countries. And I certainly researched this. Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, good, okay. And while there is, and I'm just reading from some definitions, while there are different schools of socialism, which often tend to have different views of the ideal socialist society, some general examples of socialist concepts are, quote, the desire to abolish capitalism, to place the means of production under the collective ownership of the people.
Hold right there. Hold right there. The desire to abolish capitalism. Now, can you explain to me how somebody who's a Harvard MBA, an economist from Harvard, and who's worked his entire life in high technology industries would possibly be aligned with abolishing capitalism?
Well, isn't that the whole issue, David? Why did he make this decision to seek the endorsement of a group that includes the Socialist Party? That's the question. This is an issue about judgment. I mean, David, I understand you disagree with me. I'm only standing 10 feet away from you, and I can see you on the television.
Yes.
But seriously, he has an in-kind contribution from his on his campaign finance reports. This is all in the public domain, and I think he should be upfront and tell the people that his campaign is being organized and financed and directed not by the people of Winchester and Stoneham, but by these outside organizations. So it's a question of judgment. What, if elected, is he going to owe, if anything, to these groups for the assistance they've given him in participating
Calling
in
in.
the election?
I appreciate you coming in, and we'll certainly have you on the show to hear more about what your policies will be at some later date. But I'd like to hear some of the other callers that want to discuss this.
If I could quickly just say, though, also, we're doing a series on the 4 candidates for the representative.
Good.
So far we've done 2. We've done Mike Rotundi and Brian O'Connor. Chad and also Jason Lewis are the 2 that we have remaining. So look for those coming up very soon. We'll be wrapping up the series, front page stories with video as well. Also, I just would like to say that it sounds like we're having an argument between, what kind of socialism even this Massachusetts Democratic Socialist Party adopts. Is it the radical view of socialism, or is it a modern view of socialism? I think the 2 are. Well, it's not apples and apples.
I think we should be really clear, though, that Jason Lewis has never been an advocate of socialism. He's never lived a socialist lifestyle. No. So I mean, it's an absolutely bogus accusation to make, and to do it by guilt by association with a remarkably indirect source is quite frankly absurd.
Well, I see at the very least this is an interesting piece of literature that has done what a lot of political literature is supposed to do, and it triggered a response. And,
it did, and I think that was its objective. And I think Karl Rove, were he to observe this, would be kind of proud of it.
Sure.
I just don't think that it fits well in democratic Massachusetts.
And if we can get Jason on the line, I'd really like to ask Jason
Yes.
whether or not he does hold socialist
I think we do have
views.
somebody on the line right now. Good evening. Who are we talking to?
Hi, this is Gloria Legvold, and I will say right away that I am serving as campaign chair for Jason Lewis, and I'm a Winchester resident, longtime Winchester resident, and I don't quite know how to begin to respond to the conversation that Chad has been having with you. I came home from the Cape and found stuck in my door this piece of literature that you've been discussing. I admit to being both amazed and angered by this piece of false literature. And then when I opened up my newspaper today, it dropped out of my Winchester Star also. I think it reflects very poorly on Mr. Riley, and I think his answers have been a bit disingenuous here and false. I began talking with Jason maybe over a year ago now, when he was considering running for state representative. He had, in fact, talked with Paul Casey a couple of times about this. He was considering doing something with nonprofit, and then he decided that what he really wanted to do was to serve in the legislature and help make policy. I would mention that I'm a retired educator. Spent my life working with young children in high school, and I've loved politics also all my life, and I'm dismayed that this sort of if the campaign literature comes out and the discussion that Chad has just had. I think this fosters cynicism in our political system, and I hate to have that fed in among young people. Jason's campaign at this very moment has a lot of young people working for him, very excited about learning about the political process and how campaigns work, and really participating in American democracy the way that I hope kids always will. And I want to be clear that Stoneham and Winchester, there's really no place for this kind of propaganda.
Can I ask you Can we ask a pretty blunt question?
I want to talk about national
Definitely. We'll get that technology worked out. But can I just ask you straight out, I hope you can hear this question. Can you answer for us, is Jason Lewis a socialist?
I can barely hear you, but I think you asked if Jason was a socialist, and I think this is preposterous. Jason has worked for a huge international consulting management company. He has an MBA from Harvard.
Well-known socialist organization.
And he's founded 2 technological companies. But let me say something about Mass Alliance, which was being defamed there. Mass Alliance, we're very proud to have the endorsement by Mass Alliance. Mass Alliance has supported Pat Phelan and numerous other state representatives and senators have been endorsed by Mass Alliance. It's a group that includes environmental groups, teachers' organizations, women's rights groups. Their mission is to improve our schools and make healthcare affordable, protect our environment, help working families, and I think these are the same beliefs that the Winchester and Stoneham people share.
Sounds like Mass Alliance is a group of many, many viewpoints, and it would probably be difficult for any one politician to align themselves 100% with all of those views.
Yes.
But
It's like saying,
I also want to say that Jason's campaign is supported by over 500,000 individual donors. This is a very grassroots movement, and we've been working hard to earn people's support and to listen to their ideas.
how much money have you raised to date? Recent fundraising figures. How much money have you raised to date?
Oh, I don't know if I can tell you exactly. We might be around 80,000. Most of our donors, the average donation is about $80 to $130. We have contributions of $5 and up to the individual maximum, which is $500. And we're using our money to get our information out to the voters. Jason's knocking on doors. We have lots of high school kids with us.
Okay.
very interesting.
Great.
So I wonder where this is all heading. It certainly appears to me that Rory, that this is kind of a blatant attempt to make up for coming into the campaign late, and to be an attention getter. But it seems like a horrible way to get attention.
Well, I guess that'll be determined.
The electorate can determine themselves.
At very least, I think Chad got a lot of FaceTime, well, not FaceTime, but voice time on this show,
Yes.
and I know that I'd like to talk to him further and find out really if if socialism really is one of the social ills that we need to battle right now.
Right. Yes, is it high on the agenda? But also, I'd certainly like to we're scheduled to have Brian O'Connor on the show, Chad, and the other candidate is
Mike Rotundi?
Mike Rotundi, because we really want to know what their positive agenda is for Winchester, rather than what slam they can land on a competitor.
I think Winchester and Stoneham have a very good opportunity right here, because how often do you see a state rep race this heavily contested?
Yes, and this well funded too. I mean,
Yeah.
this is serious money for a state race.
Yeah,
I would think.
definitely.
We have one more caller on the line. Who is calling? Eli.
Yeah,
Or Eli?
I was watching and I saw you read it. Thank you very much for reading it.
Well, could you tell us a little bit what inspired the first sentence?
Which one was the first sentence?
Points after 2 words?
Sleaze?
Yeah.
Well, I think David used a word that I hadn't thought of at the time, McCarthyism. It's just that kind of backhanded slam. He's not accusing him of being a socialist. That's preposterous. He's just dropping a word in there because he thinks it'll get a reaction. I think you guys have done a wonderful credit for the voters of Winchester. I don't know how many people are watching the program this evening, but anybody who listened to Chad Riley bloviate, is that a good word, for the last 15 minutes would now be convinced to vote for one of the other 3 candidates. What a windbag.
Well, I guess that wraps up that story. Well, what else would you like to comment on this attempt? And what else is going on in the campaign right now? I mean, how do you see the race
this is really
going?
the first geyser spurt of the campaign. I expect this is going to be the first of many.
Yes.
So I guess we'll see.
Are we seeing any polling data at all that at least is publicly available?
No, but perhaps we should create our own poll. We actually do polling on our website.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Another shameless plug.
that's okay.
Completely
Shameless commerce is good.
unscientific polling, of course.
This is non-socialist plug.
Non-social. we're trying to do this on a weekly basis right now. It's on a bi-weekly basis, sort of like our show will be. Readers of Winchester, watchers of Winchester will all have a chance to weigh in and vote on the issues that are important to you. This past week, we had a poll about the new town hall work week, which is a much shorter work week than a lot of us are used to, longer days on 4 days. And it's an attempt to save money as far as energy is concerned. And
That's a great policy.
it somewhat mirrors the policies enacted in California right now. Whether it'll work, I think, is to be argued. But the Winchester voters seem to want more services online so that they don't have to go to town hall. Next week, we're going to actually ask the voters about the nepotism policies.
All right. We've got one more call, but I'm not sure we've got time for another call. Who do we have on the line?
Hi, it's Diana Carson calling.
I hate to cut you short, but I can give you exactly 2 minutes.
I can take it. I just wanted to say that the brochure that came from Tad Riley in the mail yesterday totally crossed the line with me. It seemed like a brazen attempt to distort the facts and create negative innuendo around Jason Lewis. And the surprising part to me was how blatantly untrue it was and what a blatant attempt at manipulation it was. And my main thought was that he must be counting on voters to be ignorant and susceptible to this kind of thing, as if we don't often know the facts and base our decisions, and as if we base our decisions on vague impressions instead of understanding the issues. It's a gross underestimation of voters in Stoneham and Winchester, and it's an underestimation of Jason Lewis's ability to communicate effectively about where he stands on the issues. I think also Tad Riley's attempt at describing socialism was hilarious.
We're losing the feed. I think this is probably a mailing that would work much better on a national level, judging by the last 2 presidential elections.
That's true. That's true. I think with this electorate, I think they're probably fairly resistant to this. But look, it's time to wrap up. It's an hour has gone like in a flash, as it tends to go.
Fast.
It goes quickly. So thank you very much, Rory. I'm looking forward to 2 weeks' time where we do this all over again.
Thanks for having me.
And I'm sure we'll get a few of the wrinkles in our sound system sorted out so that we can hear it a little bit more
Please
crystal
email
clear.
me with show ideas, winchester@cnc.com.
Absolutely. And thank you very much to everybody here in Winchester, and have a very good evening.